Michigan survived Maryland. You know, they got out to a 23-7 lead midway through the second quarter. And then after that, Maryland's offense started to hum. Taulia Tagovailoa, he made some really big throws downfield. These receivers were having their way with Michigan's secondary. From midway second quarter until about early fourth quarter, Maryland's offense was having a lot of success against a really good Michigan defense. Michigan's defensive line, though, they came through in the biggest moments late in this game. They also were causing havoc early in this game. You had the Taulia strip sack fumble that resulted in a touchdown. Then right after that, you have the special teams mishap by Maryland, which they were really fortunate that Michigan didn't fall on that thing and it resulted in a safety instead of a touchdown. This game looked like it was just going to be a beatdown the way that it started out for Michigan. But the fact that Maryland was able to lock in and get composed and settled in, they scored 3 quarterback sneaks. This was a really good game and a really hard-fought effort by Mike Locksley and company. But the same reason why Maryland lost this game is the same reason why Maryland kind of is stuck in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten, because they can't find ways to seek out close wins against great teams. You know, Maryland, in the fourth quarter of big games, anytime they have a little bit of momentum, they always find a way to fold. And they folded in this game. The offensive line completely fell apart all throughout the fourth quarter. They got into third and long situations. Taulia was making bad decisions. Mike Sanders still had, 2 interceptions alone in this game by himself because of bad decisions by Taulia Tagovailoa. Now, the third down interception that he threw on third and long, backed up in their own end zone, it's like, you kind of have no choice but to throw that pass because you just got to try to make something happen. But Taulia just isn't a great quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback, but he's not good enough to turn this Maryland program around. And their defense played a really good game for the most part. It's like you would have thought that Michigan just would have ran for 250 plus on this Maryland defense. And although they did outgain Maryland by a handful, Maryland only had 15 rushing yards in this game. All Maryland could do was throw the football. Michigan's offense did not look that great in this game. And if it wasn't for the defense getting that scoop and score, strip sack, fumble, touchdown, and, getting that block punt that resulted in a safety, this game probably could have looked entirely differently. Now, of course, they had success running the football, but the passing game didn't look that great. And I keep telling people that J.J. McCarthy is the most overrated quarterback in college football, and we saw that in this game. This dude threw a bad interception in the red zone where he stared down his wide receiver, threw it right to the Maryland defensive back that was there right before halftime. If Michigan comes away with points there, and that's a touchdown, that probably puts this game on ice. And after that play, Maryland, the momentum started to tilt in their favor. You have receivers that were making big catches all over this Michigan secondary. One thing about Maryland is that this offense at times, when they're humming and they're in rhythm and they're hop, they're really hard to stop. But the fact that they just didn't have enough horses up front, and Mike Locksley and company are known for kind of folding and finding ways to win big games when it looks like they got a chance to pull off the upset. That's a large reason why Michigan lost this game. If they were going up against a better coach team, I think that they probably lose this matchup. Now, they're going up against Ohio State next week. And if Ohio State can stop the run, I'm really concerned about Michigan's ability to have efficiency offensively. J.J. McCarthy is not that good. He's not bad, but he's not this great QB a lot of people are projecting him to be. I don't think he's a first-round quarterback right now. He still doesn't do a really good job at looking off defenders with his eyes. He stares down receivers too often. Yes, he got a really nice arm, and he's a really good athlete, especially when it comes to extending plays and buying time for guys to get open. But he still has a lot of room to go until I can look at him and say, oh, yeah, like J.J. McCarthy is a great quarterback. I think that he's massively overrated, and we saw that displayed in this game. And if he doesn't play better football against Ohio State, they could lose that game in really embarrassing fashion. At least with Kyle McCord at quarterback, he's not good neither, but he has Marvin Harrison Jr. to throw the football to. Michigan has Roman Wilson, but Roman Wilson ain't no Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison literally has carried Ohio State's offense in a handful of games, including that win over Penn State. When you got a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka and all the talent that they have at the wide receiver position, it's kind of hard for a guy like Kyle McCord just to completely stink it up. Michigan isn't that talented at wide receiver. They're also not that deep in. That's not what they do best. I don't think they're a team that is going to be able to win games just relying on J.J. McCarthy to air it out all game long. They got to be balanced. They got to be able to play complementary football, and they're still a run-first team at the end of the day. Maryland at times in the second half was able to get Michigan's offense off the field, and they were able to stop the run. And if Ohio State can take away that run game and this becomes a one-dimensional Michigan offense like we saw last year in their semifinal loss to TCU, they're going to be in trouble. Maryland showed a lot of big weaknesses with Michigan's game. You know, yeah, they are the most physical team in college football. They got a great offensive line. They got great running backs. But J.J. McCarthy is really inconsistent as a passer. And I don't know if he's going to be good enough to get them to win over Ohio State. I'm still giving them a shot because Kyle McCord isn't that great neither. And if they can find a way to take away Marvin Harrison Jr., it's a game. But if Marvin Harrison Jr. gets going and they don't have any way to slow him down, and plus their run game gets slowed down, Ohio State wins that game, and it probably could be by multiple possessions. So Michigan needs better play out of J.J. McCarthy next week going into the game. For Maryland, this is a really disappointing loss. You probably weren't expecting to win this game. Hell, Maryland fans were probably crossing their fingers that this would at least be a competitive game, and at one point it was. You would have thought that Maryland was going to get blown out once they went down 23-7. But the fact that they fought back into this game and they had a shot to win it all the way until the fourth quarter and they just fell apart due to self-inflicted wounds and errors and just not playing their best football, it's a big reason why Maryland kind of stuck in the middle of the Big Ten picture. When you think of the three best teams in the Big Ten, you think Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, in any order. Michigan is number one, Ohio State's number two, and then you got Penn State number three for guys who want to be technical about the hierarchy in the Big Ten. And then after that, you probably have what? Iowa, Minnesota, who else? Maryland is in that conversation. When Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA come into town, Maryland pretty much could become irrelevant in the Big Ten. They could become a bottom feeder in the Big Ten because they're not really recruiting all that well. Mike Locksley isn't doing a good job at recruiting that area. Like, Maryland is a job where you could be able to pull off some big-time upsets at if you have the right head coach who can recruit the area well, and Mike Locksley isn't doing a good job of that, and Taulia isn't that great of a quarterback to get Maryland over the hump that they're in right now in terms of breaking through and being able to actually be a legitimate threat in the Big Ten to the big boys of this conference. Maryland just isn't one of those teams that knows how to play a full game for 4 quarters. They'll play a good game for the first 3 against you, and then in the fourth quarter, they just go ahead and they gift you the win. That's something that I've seen continuously throughout Mike Locksley's tenure as the head coach of the Terps, man. Like, they'll get into these close games against Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, and then in the fourth quarter, they just find ways to fall flat on their face. Michigan got a really tough win against Maryland. They struggled in this game. Once they got that 23-7 lead, Maryland was able to hang around, and they were able to give them a little bit of a scare, but Michigan's defense was a really big difference maker in the Wolverines being able to remain undefeated. And now we get the game, them against Ohio State. I don't know who's going to win that thing right now, but we are going to be talking about that matchup a lot this week in depth on the podcast. So make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we upload content. because we're going to be pumping out a lot of Michigan and Ohio State content over the next couple of days. The Wolverines get the win over the Terps, 31-24. They remain unbeaten on the season.